What happens when arrogance meets intellect? A packed 3-Michelin star restaurant, L'Étoile d'Or, becomes a silent battlefield. The antagonist? Harrison Blackwood, a billionaire tycoon who believes his net worth buys him the right to humiliate anyone. The target? A young waitress named Emir, serving him foie gras and enduring his scorn. He laughs in her face, mocking her poverty, sneering to his date. She can't even read the menu. But he has no idea who he's talking to. He's about to make a mistake that will cost him everything, and she's about to destroy his empire in fluent French. The air inside L'Étoile d'Or wasn't just air. It was a carefully curated atmosphere. It smelled of old money, reduced veal stock, and the faintest hint of beeswax from the polished mahogany. At 7 p.m. on a Tuesday, the main dining room was a low symphony of clinking silver, hushed French, and the subtle, pressurized importance of people who didn't need to look at prices. And then there was Emir. To the patrons, she was just a part of the decor, as functional as the crystal water glass or the damask napkin, dressed in the restaurant's severe black and white uniform, her honey blonde hair pulled into a brutally tight chignon. She was designed to be invisible. Her movements were fluid, economical, and silent. She refilled water without being asked, cleared crumbs with a silver tool without interrupting conversation, and smiled a small, neutral smile that meant everything and nothing. But Emir wasn't invisible. She was observing. This job wasn't a career, it was a cage, and it was a vantage point. For 10 hours a day, she walked among the lions, listening. She heard snippets of boardroom betrayals between sips of Chateau Lafite, whispers of insider trades over plates of canard à la presse, and the casual, cruel dismissals of lives and fortunes by men who owned islands. Tonight, the restaurant was electric with a specific tension. Pascal, the maître d', a man who moved like a hawk and had the judgmental eyes of a high court judge, had briefed the staff twice. Mr. Harrison Blackwood, table 7. At 8, he'd hissed, his French accent slicing the air in the staff kitchen. He is America? New money. Loud. But he is also, malheureusement, one of the most powerful men in the city. He is bringing a guest. A very important guest. There will be no mistakes. Emir felt a cold knot tighten in her stomach. Harrison Blackwood. She hadn't just heard of him. She knew the name the way a survivor knows the name of a storm. Blackwood, the corporate raider, the asset stripper, the man who smiled for Forbes magazine while his lawyers buried families in paperwork. Emir closed her eyes for just a second, visualizing her small, damp apartment, the corkboard above her desk covered in index cards, company charts, and redacted legal documents. The name Blackwood was at the very top, circled in red. "Emir!" Pascal snapped, pulling her from her thoughts. "You are on table 7. Why? Because you are quiet, and you do not make mistakes. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not exist. Compris?" "Yes, Pascal." "Understood." She existed. She existed more than anyone in this room knew. She was here because L'Étoile d'Or was his preferred hunting ground. It was where he brought the people he wanted to intimidate, impress, or destroy. And tonight, Emir, the invisible waitress, would be 2 feet away, listening. She spent the next hour in a state of hyper-focus. She served an amuse-bouche to a theatrical producer at table 5, deftly navigated a complaint about the climatization from a senator's wife at table 9, and kept her eyes on the ornate, gilded entrance. At 8:02 p.m. he arrived. Harrison Blackwood didn't just enter a room, he conquered it. He was a big man, broad-shouldered in a suit that probably cost more than Emir's entire yearly salary. His voice boomed, shattering the delicate symphony of the dining room. Pascal, good to see you. Best table, I trust. I'm starving. Pascal materialized with a strained, obsequious bow. Mr. Blackwood. A pleasure, of course. Your table is ready. Blackwood clapped him on the shoulder, a gesture of dominance that made Pascal wince. And then Emir saw his guest. She was the opposite of Blackwood. While he was loud, she was silent. While he was all sharp angles and expensive branding, she was all soft, understated elegance. She wore a simple, dark teal silk dress. Her dark hair was cut in a severe, chic bob, and her jewelry was limited to a single, breathtaking pearl-ala pendant. She moved with a liquid grace, her eyes, intelligent and assessing, taking in the entire room, finally landing, just for a second, on Emir. Emir felt an unexpected jolt, like being recognized. The woman's gaze wasn't dismissive. It was analytical. "Harrison, please," the woman said, her voice quiet with a subtle, unplaceable European accent. "You are making a scene." "Nonsense, Izzy!" Blackwood boomed, already striding toward table 7. "I am the scene." Emir moved to the table, holding 2 leather-bound menus. She stood slightly behind the woman, waiting. "Good evening," she murmured. "My name is Emir. I will be your server tonight." Blackwood didn't even look at her. He was busy scanning the room, nodding at a rival banker across the way. Water, sparkling, with lemon. No, 2 lemons. A whole bowl of lemons. And fast. "Right away, sir." She turned to the woman, Izzy. Izzy, however, was looking directly at her. "Just still water for me, please." "Thank you, Emir." Emir nodded, her professional mask firmly in place, and glided away. The battle had begun. She had secured the water, but the real test was coming. The entire reason L'Étoile d'Or held its 3 stars was not just its food, but its stubborn, magnificent refusal to compromise. The menus were, and had always been, written entirely in classical, culinary French, and Emir knew, with a sinking certainty, that Harrison Blackwood couldn't read a single word. Emir returned with the water service. She placed the heavy, crystal bottle of Voss still water for Izzy and the San Pellegrino for Blackwood, along with a crystal bowl of precisely cut lemon wedges. Blackwood was already complaining. "This place is a morgue tonight, isn't it? I told my pilot, get me to New York. I need some energy. And Pascal sticks us in this crypt." He leaned across the table toward Izzy, his voice a conspiratorial, carrying whisper. "Don't worry. After this, I'm taking you somewhere fun. Someplace with music, not whatever this is." Izzy Vance sipped her water, her expression unreadable. "Harrison, this is one of the finest restaurants in the world. It is an institution." "It's an institution that needs an update," he grunted, flapping open the menu. Emir watched him. It was a practiced art. She could see the exact moment his bluster faltered. His eyes scanned the heavy, cream-colored cardstock. She saw the slight furrow of his brow, the tightening of his jaw. He was staring at words like foie de veau rôti au raisin and riz de veau piqué au lard. He had no idea what he was looking at. He snapped the menu shut. "Emir!" he called out, clicking his fingers. Emir was at his side instantly, the sound hitting her like a small stone. "Sir? What's good here? Just tell me what's good. I want steak." "The Chateaubriand Bouquetière is exceptional, sir," Emir said smoothly. "It is for 2, served with sauce béarnaise and seasonal vegetables." "Fine, whatever. Get me that. Rare. No, bloody. Tell the chef to just walk it past the fire, and get me a lobster, a big one, on the side." "A homard thermidor, perhaps?" Emir suggested. "I don't care what door it is, just a big grilled lobster, with butter. Lots of butter. Got it?" "Yes, sir." He waved her away, a flick of the wrist, as if dismissing a fly. He turned his full, beaming, 1,000-watt attention back to Izzy. See, simple. You just have to know how to handle the help. Emir felt the familiar, hot sting of humiliation, but she banked it. She turned to Izzy, who was still calmly reading her menu. Madame, have you decided? Izzy looked up, not at Emir, but at Blackwood. Harrison, the Chateaubriand is for 2. Are you planning on sharing with me? What? Oh, right. Well, you'll have some, won't you? I was rather hoping to try the poulade de Bresse en Vessie, Izzy said, her pronunciation perfect. Blackwood looked lost. What? It is the breast chicken, sir, Emir explained quietly. Poached inside a pig's bladder. It is a house specialty. Very delicate. Blackwood's face contorted in disgust. A bladder? You want to eat chicken from a bladder? What is this? Medieval times. He laughed, a loud barking sound that caused the couple at table 5 to look over in annoyance. Izzy did not laugh. Her composure remained, but Emir could see a faint, high-status flush of pink on her cheeks. She was embarrassed. Not for herself, but by him. It is a classic dish of haute cuisine, Izzy said coolly. Prepared by Paul Bocuse himself, but perhaps it is too much. It's ridiculous, Blackwood declared. They're just trying to charge you $200 for a chicken by putting it in a balloon. He tossed the menu onto the table. You, Emir. What's she having? This was the ultimate dismissal. He was no longer even addressing Izzy. He was speaking about her to the waitress. Emir kept her eyes on Izzy, a silent act of allegiance. Madame? Izzy looked at Emir, and her eyes were cold. Not at Emir, but at the situation. She closed her menu softly. I seem to have lost my appetite. I will start with the consommé Célestine. Just soup? Blackwood balked. You've got to eat, Izzy. This deal we're celebrating. It's big. You need to keep your strength up. I will start with the consommé, Izzy repeated, her voice soft but laced with steel. She held Emir's gaze. And for the main, I will have the sole millionaire, prepared tableside if possible. Of course, madam, Emir said. And for you, sir, the Chateaubriand is for 2. Would you prefer the filet de bœuf Rossini? It is a single portion, served with foie gras and a truffle Madeira sauce. Yeah, fine, Blackwood grumbled, clearly annoyed that his bloody steak plan had been complicated. That one, the Rossini, and that lobster. Don't forget the lobster. Very good, sir. Emir collected the menus, her hands steady. As she turned to walk away, she heard Blackwood lean in again, his voice dropping to what he thought was a discreet level, but which was, in reality, perfectly audible. My apologies, Izzy. This place is so stuffy. And the staff, I mean, honestly. You're trying to order, and our waitress looks like she's about to burst into tears, probably terrified. She can't even read the menu. He laughed again. Emir stopped it. Her back was to him. She didn't turn. She could feel Pascal's eyes on her from across the room. Do not exist, he had said. She stood frozen for 1 second. 2. The sound of the restaurant rushed back in. The silver, the whispers. He had just handed her the weapon. She took a slow, deep breath, centered herself, and proceeded to the kitchen. The humiliation was a shield now. It was a cold, hard, focusing energy. He thought she was a terrified, illiterate girl. He thought she was nothing. Good, she thought, as she pushed through the swinging silver doors into the chaotic, humid heat of the kitchen. That is exactly what I want him to think. But the insult had been logged. And in Emir's world, every insult, every dismissal, every bit of data was filed away. Debts were always paid. The first course arrived. Izzy's consommé Celestine was a clear, amber liquid of impossible depth, with delicate, thread-like crepes. Blackwood had demanded a shrimp cocktail, despite it not being on the menu. The kitchen, under Pascal's terrified orders, had produced one. 6 colossal shrimp hanging off the side of a martini glass, filled with a luridly red sauce. "See? You just have to ask," Blackwood announced, dousing one of the shrimp in horseradish. Izzy ignored him, closing her eyes as she tasted the consommé. "Perfection," she murmured. Blackwood was tapping his fingers on the table, already bored. "So, this Rousseau deal," he said, shifting from personal to business. "Your father is still hesitant. I don't get it. My numbers are solid. The Blackwood acquisition of Devereux Maritime alone doubled my asset portfolio." Emir, clearing a nearby table, went rigid. Devereux Maritime, her father's company, his company. She had to force her hands not to shake as she stacked the plates. "My father, the Rousseau Group. We are an old company, Harrison," Izzy said, placing her spoon down. "We do not value doubled assets as much as we value stability. Legacy. Legacy doesn't pay dividends," Blackwood scoffed. Devereux was a failing, old-world company run by a fool who didn't know how to adapt. I did him a favor. "A fool." Emir gripped the plate so tightly her knuckles turned white. She remembered her father, Antoine Devereux, a man of quiet integrity, who built ships that were marvels of engineering, a man who, after the hostile takeover, had retreated into a shell, his health failing, his name ruined by fabricated reports of mismanagement, reports she knew Blackwood's team had leaked. "A favor," Izzy repeated, her voice neutral. "Is that what you call it?" "It's what I call good business. Now," he said, brightening, "let's get some wine in here. This soup is making me sleepy." He flagged Amaya down again, this time with an imperious wave. "Wine. We need wine. Bring the wine list." "Right away, sir." Amaya retrieved the wine list, a tome thicker than a Bible, bound in the same dark blue leather as the menus. She presented it to Blackwood. He opened it, and this time the confusion on his face was even more pronounced. This wasn't just French. It was a dense map of appellations, domains, and vantages that would confuse anyone not deeply educated in enology. Bordeaux, Bourgogne, Premier Cru, Grand Cru. He was drowning. He slammed this book shut, too. The thud was definitive. "This is absurd," he said, his voice rising. "I'm not doing this. You," he pointed at Amaya. "You're the expert, right?" His tone was thick with sarcasm. "What do you know? You're probably just a college kid paying off loans. What's your major? French fries?" Izzy visibly winced. "Harrison, that is uncalled for." "I'm just having fun," he shrugged. "Lighten up." He turned back to Amir, his eyes gleaming with a kind of predatory amusement. "I'll make it easy for you. Bring me a bottle of Chateau Margaux, 1982. He said it with a flourish, a gotcha expression on his face. He had named one of the most famous, most expensive wines in the world. A perfect 100 bottle. He was testing her, assuming she wouldn't know it, or that the restaurant wouldn't have it. Emia paused. She didn't look at the list. She didn't need to. "An excellent choice, sir," she said, her voice perfectly even. "The 82 Margaux is indeed a legendary vintage, a triumph of the harvest." Blackwood looked momentarily surprised that she knew the name. "However," Amaya continued, her voice dropping slightly, "if I may be so bold, the 82 is known for its powerful tannins and deep notes of cassis and graphite. It is a magnificent wine, but it will completely overpower Madame's Saule Meunière. and with the foie gras in your filet rossini, it might create a metallic clash on the palate. The table went utterly silent. Blackwood stared at her. His smirk had vanished, replaced by a look of flat, cold confusion. He was processing what she had just said. Izzy, on the other hand, had put her chin on her hand and was watching Emir with a new, intense interest. "What? What did you just say?" Blackwood asked, his voice dangerously low. "I was merely suggesting, sir, that a wine of that magnitude might be better suited to a heavier dish. Perhaps a rack of lamb, or the Chateaubriand you initially suggested. For your chosen dishes, may I recommend something from the right bank? Perhaps a Pomerol, the 1990 Chateau La Conseillante. It has the same prestige, but the Merlot base is softer, with more red fruit and truffle notes that would complement the foie gras rather than fight it." Emir held her breath. She had just crossed a line. She had corrected him. She had not only read the menu, she had understood it at a level he couldn't even comprehend. Blackwood's face began to turn a deep, blotchy red. He was furious. Not just angry, he was profoundly, fundamentally humiliated, and he was not a man who tolerated humiliation. Are you correcting me?" he hissed. "You're a waitress. You bring what I order. Who in the hell do you think you are?" "I am trying to ensure you have the best possible dining experience." "Sir," Emir said, her heart hammering, but her voice betraying nothing. "You're a nobody," he spat, leaning in. "You're a servant. You come here, you take my order, and you get out. You do not talk. You do not think. You get me the 82 Margot, now, or you're fired. Do you understand me? Harrison," Izzy's voice was sharp. "Stop it. You are behaving like a boor." "He's not the only one," a voice cut through the air. Pascal, the maître d', was approaching the table, his face pale and his eyes wide with terror. He had heard the confrontation. "Emir," Pascal said, his voice shaking. Go to the back. Now." He turned to Blackwood, bowing. "Monsieur Blackwood, my deepest apologies. She is new. She is ignorant. Please forgive this. I will send over a bottle of champagne, compliments of the house. I will handle your wine order personally." He was throwing her to the wolves. Blackwood sat back, a cruel, triumphant smile spreading across his face. "See? That's service. You're fired," he said, pointing at Emir. Emir looked at Pascal, who was pointedly avoiding her gaze. She looked at Blackwood, who was smirking, and she looked at Izzy, who was watching her, waiting. Emir did not move. "Emir, I said go!" Pascal hissed. And that's when she broke character. The mask of the invisible waitress didn't just crack, it shattered. She stood up straight, her posture changing. The subservient slump was gone. She suddenly looked taller. She lifted her chin, and for the first time, she made direct, unwavering eye contact with Harrison Blackwood. She did not speak to him. She turned to Izzy, and she began to speak. Not in English. "Pardonnez-moi, Madame Vance," she said, her voice clear, bell-like, and resonating with an authority that stunned the table. Her French was not the serviceable, accented French of a college student. It was the flawless, aristocratic, Parisian French of a native speaker from the 16th arrondissement. "Monsieur Blackwood a raison sur un point. Il ne devrait pas avoir le Margot activé deux. Excuse me, Madame Vance. Mr. Blackwood is right about one thing. He should not have the Erai du Margot." Izzy's eyes widened. She replied instantly, in the same perfect French. "Et pourquoi donc, mademoiselle?" "And why is that, miss?" Blackwood was looking back and forth between them, his face a mask of baffled rage. What are you saying? Speak English. This is America. Emiya held up a single delicate hand, a stop gesture so imperious that Blackwood actually stopped talking. She continued, her eyes locked on Izzy. Parce que ce serait un gaspillage absolu. C'est un vin fait pour la contemplation, pas pour l'arrogance. C'est comme donner un Stradivarius à un singe. Because it would be an absolute waste. It is a wine made for contemplation, not for arrogance. It is like giving a Stradivarius to a monkey. The silence that followed was absolute. It was so profound that Emiya could hear the fizz of the champagne from a table across the room. Pascal looked as though he might faint. His hand was pressed to his chest, his face ashen. Harrison Blackwood was vibrating with a rage he couldn't express because he didn't know what had just been said. He only knew he was the target. Izzy Vance did something Emiya hadn't seen all night. She smiled. It wasn't a small, polite smile. It was a wide, genuine, delighted grin. She let out a small, sharp laugh. Un singe? C'est un peu dur, non? A monkey? That's a bit harsh, isn't it? Est-ce que c'est faux? Is it wrong? Emiya replied, her voice smooth as silk. Izzy's smile faded, and she leaned forward, her expression turning from amusement to pure, focused intensity. Her gaze was sharp, analytical. She was reassessing everything. Vous parlez français comme une Parisienne, Izzy said. Mais votre connaissance du vin, c'est autre chose. Ce n'est pas quelque chose qu'on apprend dans une école de service. Qui êtes-vous? You speak French like a Parisian, but your knowledge of wine, that is something else. That is not something one learns in service school. Who are you? Speak! English! Blackwood roared, slamming his fist on the table. The water glasses jumped. Pascal! Get this! This bitch out of here! I am leaving! I will ruin this restaurant! Monsieur, s'il vous plaît, Pascal begged, rushing forward. No, Pascal, stay there, Emiya said. Her English was back, but her tone had changed. It was no longer the voice of Emiya the waitress. It was the voice of someone else. A voice of command. She turned her full attention to Harrison Blackwood. The humility was gone, replaced by a cold, glittering contempt. You're right, Mr. Blackwood. You should speak English. It's the only language you seem to grasp, however tenuously. You, he sputtered, half rising from his chair. Me, she said, cutting him off. The ignorant girl who can't read the menu. The one you just fired. The one you just compared to a monkey's intelligence. Oh, wait, my apologies. I compared you to a monkey. It seems my service school French was better than you thought. Blackwood's face was a mottled purple. You'll never work in this city again. I'll have you blacklisted. You'll be serving fries from a truck. I doubt that, Emiya said. She looked down at him, this titan of industry, and she felt nothing but pity. You see, Mr. Blackwood, you made a classic mistake. You assumed that a person's job defines their worth. You assumed that because I am serving you, I am beneath you. She gestured to the menu he had thrown on the table. I can read this menu. I can also read your company's P&L statements. I can read the fraudulent asset reports you filed with the SEC. I can read the list of shell corporations you used to siphon money from Devereux Maritime before you tanked the stock and bought it for pennies on the dollar. Blackwood froze. The colour drained from his face so fast he looked grey. The bluster, the rage, it all evaporated, replaced by a new, colder emotion. Fear. What did you say? He whispered. I said, Emiya said, her voice ringing with clarity, that I know about the Phoenix Shell Corporation. I know about the $80 million you wired to a ghost account in the Caymans. I know you faked the critical failure report on the Odyssey-class freighters to declare the company insolvent, a company that was, in fact, profitable. You're insane, Blackwood breathed, but he was looking at her differently. He was seeing her. Who are you? How do you know this? Izzy Vance was watching this exchange like a hawk, her mind clearly working 1,000 miles a minute. She looked from Blackwood's terrified face to Amaya's controlled, cold fury. "Emir," Izzy said, her voice quiet. "You said Devereaux Maritime. You spoke of it, personally." Emir finally broke her gaze from Blackwood. She looked at Izzy, and for a second, the mask of ice cracked, revealing the raw pain underneath. "He called my father a fool," she said, her voice thick. "He said he did him a favor by destroying his life's work, by destroying him." A dawning, horrified realization spread across Izzy's face. She looked at Amaya's high cheekbones, her bearing, the way she held herself even in the cheap uniform. She looked at her eyes, intelligent and full of a fire she had seen before, in boardrooms in Geneva and Paris. "Devereaux," Izzy breathed. "Oh my God, Antoine's daughter, the one who vanished, the one who was disinherited after the takeover." Amaya undid the top button of her stifling uniform collar and pulled a thin, silver chain from underneath. Hanging from it was a simple, elegant signet ring, tarnished with wear. It was stamped with a crest, a stylized ship on a shield, the crest of House Devereaux. "My name," she said, meeting Izzy's eyes, "is not Emir. It's Eliza Devereaux. And you, Mr. Blackwood, are sitting at my father's table, trying to sell his stolen assets to his oldest friends. The name Eliza Devereaux hung in the air, heavier and more potent than the 1982 Margot could ever be. Harrison Blackwood looked like he had been shot. He stared at the ring, then at Eliza's face, a look of dawning, catastrophic horror on his. He wasn't just facing an angry waitress. He was facing a ghost. He was facing the one person on Earth who had the motive, the intelligence, and the standing to ruin him. It's not possible," he stammered. She's gone. The daughter was a socialite, a party girl. She's in Monaco, or she's working at L'Etoile d'Or, serving you shrimp cocktail," Eliza finished, her voice cutting. "Because you're a creature of habit, Harrison. You love this restaurant. You bring all your marks here. And I knew that if I waited long enough, you would eventually bring someone important, someone you needed to impress, someone from the Rousseau group." Izzy Vance slowly stood up. She was no longer a date, no longer an amused observer. She was a power player, and her entire demeanor had shifted to that of a CEO. "Harrison," she said, and her voice was no longer soft. It was ice. "Is this true? Did you acquire Devereaux Maritime?" "It was a legal takeover," he protested, his voice rising in panic. "It was all legal. Hostile, yes, but legal. She's lying. She's just a bitter child." "The Rousseau Group," Izzy said, as if addressing a courtroom, "was in negotiations for a strategic partnership with Devereaux Maritime for 2 years. My father, Jean-Luc Rousseau, and Antoine Devereaux were friends. We were planning a merger that would have created the largest sustainable shipping fleet in the world." She turned her icy gaze on Blackwood. And then, suddenly, the deal was dead. Antoine was disgraced. Reports of gross mismanagement surfaced. The company's value plummeted. And you swept in and bought it for nothing. You told us it was a rescue operation. "It was," Blackwood insisted, his eyes darting between the two women. "Was it?" Eliza stepped forward. "Or did you bribe the head of acquisitions, a Mr. Robert Henderson, to fabricate the engine failure reports?" Did you pay him $2 million through a shell company called Phoenix Solutions? Because I have the wire transfer receipts. I've spent the last 18 months of my disinheritance living in a basement apartment, cross-referencing every email, every invoice, every scrap of paper you thought you'd shredded. I wasn't a socialite, you idiot. I was my father's protege. I have an MBA in finance from INSEAD. I built the original asset spreadsheets you corrupted. This was the final blow. Blackwood sank back into his chair, his face slick with sweat. He was done. He was cooked. Izzy looked at Eliza, a profound respect and a deep, cold anger in her eyes. "Eliza," she said, reverting to French, a signal of their new, exclusive alliance. "My father will be devastated and furious. He believed the lies. He believed Antoine had betrayed him." "Then we will tell them the truth," Eliza replied, her voice softening for the first time. "Ensemble. Together." Izzy nodded. She turned back to English for Blackwood's benefit, for his execution. "Harrison," she said. She picked up a small silk clutch from the table. "The deal, the merger. You are proposing between Blackwood Industries and the Rousseau Group." "Izzy, please. We can talk about this," he begged. "The deal is off," she stated. It was not a negotiation. It was a fact. "My father will be informed tonight. Our lawyers will be contacting yours by morning. Furthermore, the Rousseau Group is immediately freezing all existing contracts and lines of credit with Blackwood Industries, pending a full, internal investigation." This was the kill shot. Blackwood wasn't just losing a new deal. He was losing all of them. The Rousseau Group was a global conglomerate. Their pullout would trigger a cascade. He was ruined. "You can't," he gasped. That's billions. That's my company." "That was my father's company," Eliza said quietly. "Pascal," Izzy said, her voice ringing out in the now silent restaurant. Every patron was staring. "Pascal, l'addition, s'il vous plaît." The check. Pascal, who had been watching this all unfold, with the terror of a man seeing two gods go to war, stumbled forward. "Madame, Monsieur, on the house, everything, on the—" "Certainly not," Izzy said. "We will pay for our water. Mr. Blackwood," she looked at him with final, utter disdain, "will be paying for his shrimp cocktail and his filet rossini, which I believe is still on its way. I'm sure he can enjoy it alone." She looked at Blackwood. "You called my father hesitant. You were right," he said. "Izzy, I do not trust a man who has no past, who built an empire from nothing in 5 years." He said, "Find out who he really is." And so I did. She turned to Eliza. "Or rather, you did, Eliza. Thank you for the most illuminating dinner I have had in New York." Blackwood just sat there, a broken man, his mouth open, his empire crumbling around him as he stared at the plate of shrimp he'd so arrogantly demanded. Pascal, with hands that shook so badly he could barely hold the pen, presented the 2 separate checks. Izzy signed hers with a flourish. Blackwood stared at his, unseeing. "Mr. Blackwood." "Sir." "Your check," Pascal whispered, terrified. Blackwood didn't move. He was a statue of a defeated man, his tailored suit suddenly looking 2 sizes too large. Izzy turned to Eliza. "Walk with me," she commanded. It wasn't a request. Eliza looked at Pascal. I'll get my things." "You will do no such thing," Izzy said. "You are leaving with me. Now." She turned to Pascal. "This young woman's employment here is finished. She will be compensated for her full shift, and I will be adding a significant gratuity. Send the bill to my office." "Yes, Madame Rousseau-Vance." "Of course, Madame," Pascal stammered, finally understanding the true level of power he was dealing with. Eliza didn't look back. She didn't look at Blackwood. She didn't look at the tables of stunned diners. She simply unhooked her black apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on a service station. She had worn it as armor, as a disguise, and now it was just a piece of cloth. She walked, side by side, with Izzy Vance. The two women, one in a simple waitress uniform, the other in haute couture, moved through the opulent dining room as equals. They passed table 9, where the senator's wife was staring, slack-jawed. They passed table 5, where the theatrical producer was already whispering to his companion. As they reached the gilded entrance, Blackwood finally moved. A strangled, desperate sound came from his throat. Wait! He had lunged from his chair, his face a mask of desperation. Izzy, you can't! This is slander. I'll sue her. I'll sue you. Izzy stopped at the door, but she didn't turn around. She simply spoke to the air. Harrison, I would advise you to remain silent, and to hire a very good criminal lawyer. Not a corporate one, a criminal one. She pushed the door open, and the cool, damp November air of New York City hit Eliza's face. It felt like the first real breath she had taken in 18 months. A sleek black Mercedes Maybach was idling at the curb, a driver standing patiently by the rear door. He snapped to attention, opening it for Izzy. Get in, Eliza, Izzy said. Eliza hesitated, standing on the curb. Izzy, thank you. I don't know what to. Izzy looked at her. You have all the evidence? The wire transfers? The reports? I have copies, Eliza said. Physical copies, hidden, and digital copies in 3 separate encrypted locations. I've been building the case for the SEC. The SEC is slow, Izzy said with a dismissive wave, and they'll just fine him. That's not justice. What you have, that's leverage. What we have together is a different kind of power. What happens now? Eliza asked, the adrenaline beginning to fade, leaving her shaking. Now, Izzy said, a faint, dangerous smile playing on her lips. We go to my hotel. You will have a hot bath, and you will order room service. Something that didn't come from a bladder, she added, with a wink. Then you will call your father, and I will call mine. We have a merger to discuss. A real one. He's ruined, Eliza said, looking back at the restaurant window, where she could just see the silhouette of Blackwood, still standing, utterly alone, in the middle of the room. He is, Izzy agreed. The Rousseau Group pulling out will be the first domino. By morning, the financial media will be all over it. Blackwood Industries in crisis. His stock will plummet. His creditors will call in their loans. He'll be bankrupt by Christmas. This was the hard karma. This was the favor he had spoken of, returned in full. He hadn't just been embarrassed. He hadn't just lost a deal. He had lost everything, all because he couldn't be bothered to show a shred of decency to the one person in the room who held his entire life in her hands. He called me a nobody, Eliza whispered, as the driver held the door for her. He was wrong, Izzy said, sliding in beside her. He was the nobody. You, Eliza Devereux, are the heiress to Devereux Maritime, and it's time to reclaim your company. The heavy door of the Maybach shut with a solid, satisfying thunk, sealing them off from the world and sealing Harrison Blackwood's fate. As the car pulled silently into traffic, Eliza looked at her reflection in the darkened window. She was still in her uniform, her hair in its tight, severe bun. But she wasn't Emaya the waitress. She was Eliza, and she was just getting started. 3 months later, the air was different. It was thin, clean and pressurized, smelling faintly of brewed coffee and expensive leather. Eliza Devereux was 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, looking not at the peeling paint of a basement apartment ceiling, but at the snow-capped, sun-drenched peaks of the Alps punching through a sea of white clouds. She was no longer in the black and white armor of a waitress. She wore a dark navy blue suit of soft, structured wool, tailored to her frame, and a simple cream-colored silk blouse. Her hair was not in a brutal, tight chignon, but fell in soft, honey-blonde waves just past her shoulders. She was, in every visual sense, the woman she had been pretending not to be. Beside her, in the adjoining first-class seat, Izzy Vance closed a leather-bound portfolio. "The captain says we begin our descent into Geneva in 30 minutes, she said, her voice crisp. "Are you ready for this?" Eliza smiled, a slow, genuine expression that reached her eyes. "I'm ready." She tapped the screen of the tablet in her lap. For the past hour, she hadn't been reviewing contracts. She had been reading the news, watching the final, spectacular act of the hard karma she had set in motion. Harrison Blackwood was not bankrupt by Christmas. He hadn't even made it to Thanksgiving. The collapse had been a masterpiece of financial physics. Izzy's public announcement of the Rousseau Group's immediate severance of all ties with Blackwood Industries, pending a full investigation into fraudulent practices, was the first critical domino. The market, which runs on fear far faster than it ever runs on greed, had reacted with predictable panic. Eliza scrolled to a Wall Street Journal article from 6 weeks prior. The headline was stark: "The Blackwood Cascade: How a $20 billion empire vanished in 72 hours." The article detailed how the Rousseau pullout triggered margin calls from 3 different investment banks. Blackwood, over-leveraged and suddenly toxic, couldn't meet them. His stock, which had been built on the hot air of his aggressive, hostile takeovers, didn't just fall, it evaporated. He was a paper tiger, and Eliza had provided the rain. She scrolled further, past the Forbes think piece, titled "The Phoenix Fraud, Blind Arrogance, and the Fall of a Tycoon," to the one she secretly savored. It was from the New York Post, of course. A grainy, long-lens photo of Harrison Blackwood, unshaven, his eyes wild, his famously expensive suit looking like he'd slept in it. He was in a Starbucks, jabbing a finger at a 19-year-old barista. The headline was crude, perfect, and utterly devastating. "Can't even order a coffee. Disgraced billionaire throws tantrum over latte." "Poetic," Izzy murmured, sipping her water. He truly was a one-note brute, wasn't he? Humiliating service staff seems to be his only real hobby. It was his hobby, Eliza corrected, setting the tablet aside. Now his hobby is meeting with his criminal defense attorney. Blackwood wasn't just broke. He was facing a 14-count federal indictment for wire fraud, securities fraud, and racketeering. The evidence Eliza had painstakingly collected over 18 months, the wire transfer receipts, the falsified engineering reports, the emails from Robert Henderson, had been presented to the U.S. attorney by a phalanx of Rousseau Group lawyers. Henderson, facing his own prison time, had confessed everything in exchange for a plea deal. Blackwood, the man who believed he was above it all, was now trapped beneath the weight of his own crimes. But Eliza's victory wasn't just in the pages of the financial press. It was far more personal. She closed her eyes, and the hum of the jet engine faded, replaced by the memory of a quiet room 2 weeks ago. She had been at the Helios Rehabilitation Institute outside Paris, a place that smelled of pine needles and clean linen. Her father, Antoine Devereux, was sitting in a wheelchair by a large window overlooking a garden. When she had first found him after the takeover, he was a ghost in a state-run nursing home, over-medicated and listed under a false name, a final, cruel housekeeping measure by Blackwood's legal team to sever all ties. Now he was back. He was still frail, his hands shaking slightly, but his eyes were the ones she remembered. They were sharp, intelligent, and lit with a fire she hadn't seen since she was a girl. He was wearing a soft grey cashmere sweater, but she had helped him put on a pressed suit jacket over it. One must dress for business, he'd insisted. He was peering at the very spreadsheets she had once built, the ones she had just presented to the new transition board. This projection, he'd said, his voice a dry rasp, but his words precise. The DR Alliance, your 5-year growth model for the new hybrid freighters. It's aggressive, Eliza. It's beautiful. But it assumes a 40% reduction in fuel consumption. It's not an assumption, Papa, she'd replied, kneeling beside his chair. It's based on your designs, the ones you were working on before. Before. The ones I saved from your workshop. The Rousseau engineers confirmed the fluid dynamics. Your math was right. You did it. Antoine had looked away from the papers, his gaze drifting to the garden. He was silent for a long, heavy moment. He called me a fool, he whispered, the memory still a sharp-edged stone. He told the papers I was a relic, that I was running the company into the ground, that I was a fool who didn't know how to adapt. Eliza had taken his trembling hand in hers. He was the fool, Papa. He was a raider. He knows how to smash things, how to steal, how to intimidate. But he doesn't know how to build. He looked at your designs and saw cost. He looked at your company and saw assets to strip. He never saw the value. He never saw you. He turned his gaze to her, and his eyes were wet. And he never saw you, ma chérie. No, she'd said, a tear tracing its own path down her cheek. He didn't, and it cost him everything. Antoine had squeezed her hand, his grip surprisingly strong. Your mother. She always said you had her fire. But I only saw her softness. I tried to protect you. I tried to make you a socialite, to keep you from this fight. He shook his head, a look of profound, painful clarity on his face. I was the fool. I was trying to shield a warrior. My Eliza. You were always the true heir. My only heir. The jet's engines changed their pitch, pulling Eliza from the memory. She opened her eyes. The plane had banked, and the sprawling, orderly beauty of Geneva was spread out below them, arrayed around the dark, glittering expanse of the lake. We're here, Izzy said, gathering her papers. The board meeting is at 2. Jean-Luc is ecstatic. He's already calling you Madame la Stratège, Madame Strategist. He hasn't been this excited since he acquired the Swiss Telecom. How is he? Eliza asked. He's ashamed he believed Harrison, and he's grateful you gave him a way to make it right. This isn't just a merger, Eliza. It's an act of restoration. The Devereaux-Rousseau Alliance. Eliza nodded. She was flying to Geneva to sign the final papers. She was not just getting her father's company back. She was taking her seat on the board as the chief strategic officer, with a 20% stake in the newly formed multi-billion-dollar entity. Her first proposal, already ratified, was to establish a massive R&D fund based on her father's work, and, in a direct, pointed rebuke to Blackwood's entire philosophy, a new company-wide employee profit-sharing plan. She was building. As the plane began its final, smooth descent, a flight attendant moved down the quiet aisle, doing a final check. She was a woman in her late 40s, with kind, tired eyes and a professional, painted-on smile. Her name tag read Céline. Céline paused at their row. Madame Vance, Madame Devereaux, she said, her French accent professional and polite. We'll be on the ground in 10 minutes. May I get you some water, or anything else before we land? Just water for me, please. please, Celine, Izzy said, already focused on her phone. Celine turned her smile to Eliza. Madame? Eliza looked at her, and she saw her. She didn't just see a uniform. She saw the slight wince as the woman shifted her weight, a subtle gesture Eliza knew by heart. She saw the carefully maintained professionalism, the practiced neutral expression that was designed to absorb any and all behavior from the passengers she served. She saw a human being doing a difficult job with grace. Eliza remembered the sting of Blackwood's clicked fingers. She remembered the heat of humiliation when he called her ignorant and nobody. She remembered the bone-deep exhaustion of a 10-hour double shift, of being invisible, of being a function rather than a person. She gave the woman a smile, not the polite, dismissive smile of a first-class passenger, but a genuine, warm smile of recognition. Non, merci, Eliza said softly, handing her the empty champagne flute. Her French was as flawless as Izzy's. Mais je voulais vous remercier. Votre service a été exceptionnel pendant tout le vol, Celine. No, thank you. But I wanted to thank you. Your service was exceptional during this entire flight. Celine's professional smile wavered, surprised by the direct, personal acknowledgement. Oh, merci, madame. It is my pleasure. Eliza added in English. I hope you get some good rest when we land. You've earned it. The woman's eyes lit up. This was not the standard, empty pleasantry. This was empathy. Thank you, madam, she said, and this time her smile was completely real. Thank you. Welcome to Geneva. As Celine moved on, Izzy looked over, an amused, impressed glint in her eye. You're a long, long way from l'Étoile d'Or, Eliza. Eliza turned to the window, watching the runway rush up to meet them. I'll never be far from it, she said quietly. I'm taking Emia with me. Emia? The waitress, Eliza clarified. She's the one who taught me to be invisible. She's the one who learned to listen, to watch, to see what people hide. Harrison Blackwood only ever saw himself. He was his own blind spot. He was so busy looking down on everyone else that he never saw the one person standing right in front of him, holding the knife. And what do you see now? Izzy asked. The plane's wheels touched the tarmac with a gentle, definitive thud. A new life on new ground. Eliza Devereux, the heiress, the waitress, the strategist, looked out at the bright, clear Swiss morning. I see the horizon, she said, and for the first time in a long time, it's clear. We're home. And that's the story of how a single, arrogant sentence destroyed a billionaire's empire. Harrison Blackwood learned the hard way. The people you dismiss as nobodies are often the ones holding all the cards. He didn't just lose a deal, he lost his name, his fortune, and his freedom. All because he underestimated the woman pouring his water. Eliza Devereux proved that knowledge isn't just power, it's a weapon. And she used it to get the ultimate karma. What did you think of Eliza's revenge? Was it served at the perfect temperature? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you love stories about justice, karma, and characters who get exactly what they deserve, then please like this video and share it with someone who needs to see it. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you never miss a single story. Thanks for listening.